Alrighty, so I got the original video that I was planning to do out of the way, and I'm delving into something that I'm not so sure of. But I feel like it ought to be talked about with some level of objectivity. That something is a game called Mixtape. Good gravy, what a mess this whole thing was for a while. You had people on two sides ranting and raving about this thing. Was it disingenuous in its storytelling? Were people being shills and blowing smoke up the game's developers' arse for the sake of the age-old reason of
money?
So, was this game overhyped? Is it nothing more than the equivalent of wasted digital space on your hard drive? Or is it actually not as bad as folks say it is? Well, I've got no horse in this race. So I figured if anyone would be able to give this a proper look-see without being clouded by predetermined judgment, it's me. So I'm gonna do something that I've been dying to do for these newer games that I haven't had a chance to do so, because most of the games that I do are so heckin' long. So this review will contain no spoilers. It shall be spoiler-free while I go into my thoughts on this game as a whole. After this, I shall release an edited playthrough of the game, so it's not just this huge long play, where I give my thoughts and reactions to different parts of the game. Okay, on to the review. So this game is by developer Beethoven and Dinosaur, whom have only worked on one other game called The Artful Escape, and that game just straight up has Jason Schwartzman and goddamn Carl Mother Humpin' Withers among the voice cast. Also bear in mind that this game is one of those narrative games, you know, the ones that put emphasis on story and tries to sprinkle gameplay elements throughout it. Alright, now before we begin, I want to make this abundantly clear. This game is not the most amazing game I've ever played. It's not something that changed my life. It didn't leave me posing all sorts of philosophical questions after the credits roll. However, this game is an interesting take on what it's like growing up. While it doesn't state it out loud in the game's narrative, I assume it takes place in the late 90s, bordering on the super early 2000s, since portable CD players weren't widely popular until then. I should know, I actually owned one when I was a teenager myself, after owning a waterproof Walkman with those rubber buttons to keep all the water from seeping in. The latter was a Christmas gift that I can only assume was on sale because I was a nerdy boy who rarely went out, and so, I don't know, they got the idea of purchasing me a, what was really on sale. I really didn't go out. I didn't even go to the pool or the beach back then. I mean, I was busy playing Kirby Superstar for the Super Nintendo and recording things on the VCR, like all my favorite parts of Back to the Future when it was broadcast on network television. And the Red Green Show for some reason? While my childhood was nothing like what's portrayed in the game, I mean, I had very few friends, was a drama kid, and spent most of my days at home reading books, discovering the internet, and going to anime conventions, the game still somehow manages to resonate with me on some level. I think it's because, even though my own coming-of-age experience didn't unfold anywhere near similar to what happens here, some instances made me stop and think, yeah, I know how I'd feel if I was a kid in this situation, or, man, I feel that. Had something like that kind of happen to me too when I was a kid. The game unfolds like one of those classic coming-of-age movies from the 80s. The crux of the game's story is that the main character, Stacy Rockford, is moving away from her small-town home on the cusp of graduating high school and starting her life as a young adult. Though it seems her friends are at a point of contention because Stacy is moving away to New York to pursue her dreams of becoming the world's foremost music supervisor, which, to my surprise and discovery, is an actual thing. Apparently it is, and I quote, a qualified professional who oversees all music-related aspects of film, television, advertising, video games, and other existing or emerging visual media platforms as required, end quote. At least according to the Guild of Music Supervisors, which are, in fact, also an actual thing. For the entirety of the game, we follow Stacy and her aforementioned best friends, Van Slater and Cassandra Marino, and they go through a roller coaster of incidents throughout the day, from reflecting on their past, to coming to terms with how not okay they are, to their futures of having them drift apart. The game does a few things that I ended up really enjoying. Every once in a while, Stacy will turn to the player and address them directly, explaining, more often than not, the information about the next track on her playlist, which often reflects the mood of the next scene. Very reminiscent of movies like Annie Hall or, most notably, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. The game also takes you on periodic flashbacks to further elaborate on things that are mentioned. These flashbacks are either fairly quick or are full-blown scenes themselves to help fill in the blanks narratively. I also really enjoy the bits that are exaggerated either by the characters themselves in the way they remember things or in bouts of strong emotional reactions to different incidents. It's always done in a way where you're like, oh yeah, that probably didn't happen. The game is also gorgeous, especially when it comes to the backgrounds and environments. More often than not, I found myself walking or even stopping to just look around and just take in the details. The characters themselves are disasters of varying degrees. Troublemaking and petty crimes seem to be the norm for the trio, though they're at least more layered than that. They've got dreams, they've got purpose. Well, at least one does, the other two are still trying to figure things out. But hey, I've been there. I didn't know what I wanted to do straight out of high school. In fact, if I recall correctly, I hid under my bed after graduation. The writing, however, was a bit of a roller coaster with me. A bit of a mixed bag, if you will. There were scenes where I was really feeling it. Emotional gut punches that take me back to when I was a kid, having felt similar or being in similar situations with friends. Life.
Your time in Blue Moon Lagoon will not last forever. Life changes quickly. Leave nothing unsaid.
And then, sometimes there's dialogue that left me confused, or when there was dialogue that's painfully obvious that an adult wrote it, thinking that it's what a teen would say. It wasn't anything to spoil my experience, though, but it really took me out of it sometimes.
What's our options if there's no stash at the Ritz?
It'll be there.
But what if it's not? What if a possum shat in the De Bortolini's premium Pinot Grigio?
Don't even joke about that.
Can't fault it entirely either, because I remember when I was a kid, I was quite cringe myself. Okay, I'm still sort of cringe, but I would argue I was twice as much when I was growing up. I did find it really neat that we're literally listening to Stacy's playlist that she burned onto a CD for that very day, the last day of hanging out together. I mean, I distinctly remember that when I got the ability to burn CDs in my household back in the early 2000s, I would burn so many CDs. I made one for easy listening, one for classic rock and roll, so many compilations that had all sorts of genres that were just cobbled together. I remember specifically that sometimes when I was hit with particular inspiration, it was always when my mom had to take me somewhere. I always had to beg for extra time to burn the CD because I just had to have my latest mix so we could listen to it in the car CD player. Incidentally, I also remember the anti-skip function on portable CD players. Basically a function that would prevent it from skipping if it would jostle around too much. However, turning it on also drained the batteries a lot. So I always had to carry spares whenever I was out on a sleepover or just out in general for an extended period of time. But you know, the more I think about it and the more I'm looking back at this game, the more I realize how it resonates with me, this game. Before Spotify, before online music listening was the norm, I would frantically go over in my head what music would be, as weird as it sounds, suitable for my current situation. But all in all, my experience with the game was pretty good. I really enjoyed it because I'm a sucker for narrative games, ones that are oftentimes walking simulators with a lot of story to tell. This is much more than a walking simulator though, with a lot of things that you can do while it tells its story. It incorporates a ton of elements we've seen in movies and other media, and interweaves a story that takes place in a single day, but is a turning point in the lives of our main characters as they proceed into the inevitable early steps of adulthood. Oh, also, the use of licensed music here is very, very well utilized. I can't imagine it was cheap either. I mean, licensing things in general can be a financial nightmare, so making a whole game with that as the main focus is a pretty brave thing to do in my opinion. So yeah, if you're in the market for a decent story game that dips into the nostalgia of growing up and dealing with the turmoils of, well, just getting to that point in your life where it's time to grow up whether you're ready or not, I think this is worth a gander. For what it's worth, I think the game does a good job reminding us that now is not forever, especially during the times where we thought that we were invincible and the sky was the limit. It's important to remember those moments, to remember how we got here, the people who helped us become who we are. And music? Music is the cornerstone of artistic expression. It can also cement moments in our lives that can stay with us, well, for the rest of our lives. And in that, I think that's pretty impactful. I don't know. For a game that's like $20 that has a good story to tell, that's a pretty good deal if you're into narrative games. I liked it, I had fun, and while I have my complaints here and there, I think this is a pretty good experience to have. Anyway, that's it. That's all I'm going to say. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Stay tuned for that playthrough where I take you through the entirety of the game. In the meantime, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell, and remember, stay safe and keep on gaming.